I had hoped that by now in life, Brexit wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even a point of discussion. But no, we are still talking about it. The reason why is because we're supposed to have had post-Brexit checks now introduced on things like food and plant and animal produce, which is arriving into the UK. But it has been delayed again, this time for a fifth time. And it gets me thinking, because we've got these checks in the opposite direction. So it's the checks on goods coming into here that we can't seem to get our house in order and sort out, Alex. Will we ever get Brexit done?
Well, in my view, that's looking at it through the wrong lens, because Brexit itself, our ability to decide things for ourselves, that has been done. What you do and the decisions you take, that's a process that will be with us as an independent and sovereign country, hopefully at least, for the rest of my life and well beyond. So, you know, every time we do a new trade deal that we couldn't have done whilst a member of the European Union will be an aspect of Brexit on your test. And people would say, well, won't Brexit ever be finished? Well, we've done one with India, or when we do one with Pakistan, isn't Brexit going to be finished? In the same way, on this, we have the ability to decide for ourselves how we implement restrictions on goods coming into this country, bearing in mind the fact that...
What's taken us so long, then?
Well,
because the EU have figured out their side since January 2021.
Because government has consulted with business, which has told, and traders have told government they need more time to prepare for what's going to happen. And indeed, furthermore, when you put restrictions...
Hang on,
you asked me a question.
2016.
When you put restrictions on... Yes, but then we didn't actually implement Brexit for reasons we can discuss. For some time after the vote. When you impose new restrictions on things coming into a country, it can have an inflationary effect, and the people who will often pay more for it are the consumers of those products. So actually, imposing more restrictions on something may not necessarily be in consumers' interests. So government is right to tread cautiously on this. And one-way tariffs, well, that's just the way of the world. We're entitled to zero-rate things or not impose further restrictions on things, even if the other side does, because it's often in the consumer's interest.
Optimism from Alex. Do you share that?
Well, I don't know, really. To be honest with you, I don't know whether Brexit was a good thing or not a good thing. I mean, I went to vote with my son. I thought, well, it's going to be a whole pain in the neck to get out of Brexit. It's like going through a divorce. And sometimes, you know, you're in a marriage, which is no good, and you think, well, should I get divorced? I can't be bothered with all of this because I'm going to lose my house and all that. And there's so much disruption. And this is the main thing. I don't think anyone knows whether Brexit's good or bad. I think it's a 10-year thing to really discover that. But I do know that in the meanwhile, we've got a hell of a lot of disruption, and the Northern Ireland thing will never, I can't see how that ever will be resolved. And we've got enough problems.
But what disruption have we got? Well, because everything gets blamed on Brexit. If I sneezed and I had a nosebleed, there'd be someone in the vicinity that would somehow link that and connect that to Brexit.
Well, Brexit, the reason that people voted for Brexit, let's be honest, is one thing, is immigration. We had too much immigration. So what's happened since Brexit? We've got exactly the same immigration. We just replaced it with EU immigrants. We've replaced them with non-EU immigrants. That's the only difference.
Oh.
So that's why...
Gerald, I voted for Brexit, and I didn't vote for Brexit over immigration. I voted for us to be able to make sovereign decisions for ourselves rather than having those decisions made elsewhere. And that, by the way, from my view, might be a more liberal perspective on migration, which would be my perspective, for example, when it comes to a trade deal with India, where you can identify the people coming, they come for stated purposes and reasons with stated qualifications as required by our government. I'd be in favour of more of that, not less.
But loads of people did vote. Loads of people in their towns and cities, they saw immigration having changed their town and cities. In some cases, wage depression because of things like the expansion into the the Eastern Bloc, where you got all of your cheaper plumbers, etc., coming in. So it was a big factor for a lot of people.
Of course, it was a big factor, and that's a fair point. But that wasn't what Gerald said. He said that, let's be honest, the reason people voted for Brexit was that. Whereas, a matter of fact, as in any big decision, like voting for a government, there are a coalition of people motivated by different things came together. I'm much more on the free trade libertarian end of those things. But yes, I formed common cause with people who wanted restrictions to be used and implemented in different ways. But the common feature of that was the belief that the decision about what we do on it should sit with us and not with someone else.
Do you see any opportunity in Brexit? Do you look at it and go, yes, this new landscape, you're an entrepreneur, let me capitalise?
Well, no, exactly the opposite, actually. But the thing I do like is that we have got rid of another layer of politicians, MEPs. You had people like Kinnock and his whole family on this gravy train. And I don't know why we keep having to add layers of politicians. You know, when I was young, we just had the House of Lords and the House of Commons. Now we've got the Scottish Assembly, the Welsh Assembly, the Irish Assembly is not sitting. We've got various police commissioners. We've got mayors. Why do we need... We never had mayors. Why do we keep...
To bring democracy closer to the people, to let people have more influence and control over what happens in their close proximity.
Yeah, but you don't do that by having more sheriffs than cowboys. I mean, it's just getting... Why do we keep having to add more bureaucracy? So one of the things I do like about Brexit is we don't have to pay those MEPs any longer.
What I do think is an interesting challenge is that the government will need to have something to show by the next election and say, this is something concrete that we've delivered. And whether, you think the principles I'm talking about sovereignty are important or not, I accept pragmatically you need to have something to say, look, there it is, we've delivered something that you wouldn't have had without Brexit. And for me, it's probably the thing that's shaping it up to be is going to be the Indian trade deal, because that is not something you'd have been able to sign with your member of the European Union. Now, as it happens, I also think and hope the government desperately needs to have a fix on small boats coming from France, and that's something, Brexit or no Brexit, is going to have an answer to. But on the Brexit challenge of what have you done with these freedoms, biggest democracy in the world, we've got a trade deal with them, that's not a bad outcome.
No, I agree, and that's why I say the jury's out on it, because it's a swings and roundabouts situation. I mean, there are certain things that we're losing. Business investment, for instance, is 10% down because there's a lot of big companies take a view that we've made a big mistake. But it swings and roundabouts.
But how do you know that investment decline, if there is one, is directly linked or because of Brexit?
Because I think it all plays part of this scenario that Britain is going backwards. It's broken Britain. It's all to do with the NHS, the waiting lists, the fact that we spent too much in the pandemic, we got ripped off, the fact that we're now out with the Brexit. I think that all of these things pile on people. There's no pounds, shillings and pence decision. Just people take a view. Business people take a view and they say Britain has made a lot of mistakes and it's not a country that's top of our list for investment. And that wasn't the case 10 years ago. It wasn't even the case 5 years ago.
Is that fair?
No, I'm not sure it is. Obviously, everyone would want waiting lists within the NHS to be lower. It seemed, and indeed that's one of the Prime Minister's 5 key pledges, but it does seem to me that's much more to do with coronavirus and our response to it than anything else. Because we turned our NHS into a COVID health system for some enormous period of time, and the backlog mounted up hugely. That was a decision we made for ourselves. That's quite wrongly. It seems quite likely to me that will be the decision of the investigation into COVID when it finally reports back. But that's nothing to do with Brexit.